Like, where do you want to be? I think a lot of people like, yeah, I want to be a network marketer to do what? To get where, right? And I think once you get really emotionally attached to that, then the kind of like you kind of found my pattern, right? Once you figure that out, okay, who is the person I need to get proximity to figure out their system, their action?
Welcome to the Excellence Project. My name is Eric Worre, and I want to introduce you to a couple friends of mine that are top earners in network marketing. They're a great couple. They've done some amazing things. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about training. We're going to talk about how to learn how to get better. I think you're going to enjoy it. So with no further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Colten and Priscilla Echave. Colten and Priscilla, how are you?
Doing great.
Things good?
Amazing. Yes. So
you guys
honored
just
to be
came,
here.
you came out of your conference?
Yes.
Everything went well?
One amazing, best conference so far.
Yes.
Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Well, I'm glad you're here and you're able to kind of, at the end of that, swing by our little home studio here to be able to have a conversation. I'm looking forward to be able to talk with both of you about your journey. I want to talk, where you guys came from, how you connected, your network marketing kind of life. You're a top earner in the profession. I'm not saying the top, but one of the, high earners inside of the profession. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about systems because I think you've done a very good job on a challenge inside of network marketing. Having great systems inside of network marketing is not a strength of a lot of organizations. And you decided to make it a strength and made that happen. So how you're balancing business life, personal life, how you're raising children, how you're raising a team, how you're expanding around the world, your faith, your beliefs, your everything. So I want to talk about all of it. How's that sound?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Sound good?
Yes.
Our favorite topics. Let's go.
All right. Fantastic. Tell me, Priscilla, to start with yourself, tell me how, what was your upbringing and, were you an entrepreneurial family? I'm a big fan of origin stories of where people come from and what molds them in their early days.
That's where it all started. So I was the young girl that was making money at 8 years old. I would go to neighbors' houses and put out signs to babysit. And I would be the girl outside washing cars all weekend for 10 hours until it was dark out. I remember paying for all of the Windex and the soap and everything. I wanted to make money really, really young. I didn't grow up with money at all with my parents, but my dad was such a hard worker and I watched him work so hard. So it was instilled inside of me. I actually moved out at 13 years old.
Why?
Can you believe that? I know. My parents, lots of fighting and not a good
some dysfunction there, that bad energy.
Well, mom was also
my mom was 15 when she was pregnant with me. Whoa. Single mom. I grew up with my dad. They got married when I was 3 years old, so he's my dad. So they were children raising children.
Sure.
So now we have the most incredible relationship. She watches my daughter now, and I'm like, Mom, how did you do this at 15 years old?
You're like sisters almost.
We are. Big time. And now we have an incredible relationship, but yes, moved out at 13.
So I got to unpack.
Yes,
I got to unpack that for a second.
I know she's just skimming through it.
Hold on.
I forgot my mom.
Yeah.
15.
So you decide, were you living with your mom or your dad at the time?
My mom.
I've
never met my biological father.
Okay.
So my mom got married when I was 3 and he's still in the picture now. They're still married.
But that's like her father.
Got it.
That raised her.
So when you decided to move out, was it like one big thing, one big fight? You just said, I'm enough. I'm out of here?
I was so rebellious growing up.
Where did you go?
To friends' house, couches in their siblings' beds.
So you like, I'm moving out of the house and I'm going to hang out at friends' houses. And how did the friends' parents not just say, is this your daughter? You want to come pick her up?
Yeah.
That's not happening?
No. It was running away most of the time. And then it turned into moving out. So my parents are like, we can't even handle you. Please leave the house. So it was one of those things. So when I would go to my friend's house, I was working 2 jobs in high school, waitressing. And yeah, I would sleep on their couch but I lived my own life and I was so independent that I got kicked out of all of those houses too. Cause they're like, my daughter cannot do what you're doing. And she has rules and you can't be here without any rules. So
Are you going to school during this time?
oh yeah, I was in high school working 2 jobs, waitressing and sleeping on friends' couches. And then, yeah, my aunt Silvana, she said, you know what, you could come live with me, pay for rent. And I went through college.
So you moved in with your aunt?
I moved in with my aunt
How old
next.
were you when you moved in
I
with
was
her?
about 18 now.
18?
Yeah.
So for 5 years, you were just like house to house, couch to couch?
Yeah. Yeah. And my other aunt's house too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're working 2 jobs?
Sometimes 3. And always broke.
Always broke?
Always.
Where were you spending the money on?
Rent, gas, car,
Stuff.
groceries.
Yeah.
Like to live.
Independent life.
Yeah.
You had a little
Yeah.
paying job too. You were young, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Partying, going to the bars, spending a lot of money at the bars.
Yeah.
You had a fake ID, right?
I had a fake
Yeah.
ID.
Sure.
Grew up very fast
Yeah.
and went to college.
You did.
I did go to college.
So-
Finished with my
Were you
bachelor's degree.
Surprised.
No, were you a decent student in high school?
At the end of high school, I started getting it together.
Okay. And so you go to college. What'd you go to college for?
I wanted to do physical therapy
Mhm.
and I stopped with my bachelor's degree in science, paid for the whole thing out of pocket, 3 jobs, 20 units. It was wild. Zombie life. Like
Zombie life.
now in network marketing, when people talk about seasons I'm like, what's a season? I used to work Christmas Day and Christmas night and I don't know what that means. And now I'm like, wow, okay. Totally
Yeah.
different.
All right. So you come out of college. What happens then?
Come out of college, I had such a pivotal conversation with a physical therapist. And I said that he was making $70,000 a year driving a piece of crap van. And I was like, I
He's
don't
really
know.
in the cars.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want your life. He's like, you have to really love this because it's not about the money. And I really was like, I need to make money. I want to make money. So then I thought about medical sales. I need to be in sales. I've always been in sales. So, yeah. So then I'm waitressing and a couple comes in and they're like, you would be amazing at the auto auction. Can you come and just serve lunch? So I come and serve lunch and I'm selling cars in the middle of serving lunch. And they're like, we need you on our team. You're so good with people and relationships. And I built really great relationships with all the used car managers there. So quit the waitressing, didn't do the physical therapy, made that choice, got into sales and became the #1 person at the auction. And about 3 years in, I got a 50% pay cut and they said, you're making too much money. We're going to give you a 50%
Isn't that
pay
fun?
cut. So fun.
When somebody decides, here's our comp plan. No, now you're making too much. We're going to cut it.
So got that pay cut, quit, got into another auto auction, and 5 years in, got another 50% pay cut.
There's a pattern here.
Pattern. So they know how hard I'll work. They know the hoops that I'll jump through. And I love working. I love serving people and there was no cap on it. So
Right.
that's what I did. I was single.
Okay. So you're just going on this like turbocharged journey. You guys hadn't connected yet.
No,
No.
How old were you when you guys connected for the first time?
I was 31.
31. Okay. So Colten, bring me up to speed.
At what point?
On your story,
Where do I start?
your story
until we meet.
up until you met.
Okay. So I guess it starts, obviously when I was about 11 years old. That's when my mom got involved in her first network marketing company.
Really?
Yeah. So she picked.
What was it?
Well, I think that I was funny. I actually found out like this week my mom was in Amway for like a couple of weeks, but then she kind of went into like 4 or 5 different ones, and finally she picked one, and then she stuck with that one. And at the same time, she was a full-time hairstylist, and I was, she had 2 kids, and she's like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. So after about 3 years of grinding on the side, she built up a 6-figure income, and she became that stay-at-home mom with a customer base of at least 5,000 customers.
Wow.
On auto ship with her product. And I just grew up, listening to Jim Rohn. My mom, she had home events and she would pay me money when she got awards to go on stage with her and kind of like be embarrassed. Right. So I kind of like understood the network marketing. She always she paid me money to read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 14 and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Then she'd like quiz me at dinner, like, oh, what'd you read today? So I can give my $20 or $40. So she was kind of grooming me during that season. But then at the same time, my parents also got divorced. So my mom ends up moving.
How old were you when this happened?
11. And then lots of chaos, step monsters for a period of time. They're no longer in the picture, which made things worse. And then it ended up, I grew up in Southern California. My mom ended up moving to Florida with my sister and her new husband. And I stayed at 14. The law was I could pick. So I was like, you know what, Mom, I'm going to move with my dad at that time and stay living in California, which was really difficult because I didn't really see my mom and my sister for like maybe once or twice a year for about over a decade. So during that time, I live in a very wealthy area in Orange County. So actually like the show, The Real Housewives of Orange County, the first season was my high school. Wow. So that was like the area I grew up in. And it was, my dad was great, engineer, but my dad never gave me money. And I never fit in because I didn't wear the Affliction shirt. I didn't have the True Religion jeans. So I was in this position where all my friends that I would try to make, I'm a new kid in high school, which was also a very cliquey high school. They would all go to all you can eat sushi and I just didn't have money. So the only people who kind of accepted me were the stoners. So I got into weed and then I got into selling drugs and I never told anybody. Like no one in my family obviously knew, right? And I kind of had this like double life of like selling drugs, but I just kind of did it to like afford clothes and like afford going to the beach and having gas money because my parents never really gave me. My dad, I'm so glad he did this because it really made me. And I started working at 14, flipping signs on the corner for real estate projects in our area.
Really?
Yeah.
You any good at it with the twirling and all that stuff?
I got really good. I got raises,
Really?
And I got promoted. And then once I turned 16, I got a busboy job because I couldn't just sell weed because they would know, my dad would know. It's like, oh, like, how are we getting this money from?
Yeah.
So I still had to keep a full-time job, not full-time, but a part-time job in high school. And then, I'm tall. If you can't tell, I'm 6'7",
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So got into basketball, and then volleyball. And then since I live close to the beach, I just got really into beach volleyball. So during this time, a big drug dealer, making about $40,000 a year at 16 years old with no bills, cash. And at the same time, really pursuing volleyball and probably top 3 or 4 in the country for my position in volleyball. So
what's the position for
middle blocker? That was the position I got really good at. So eventually, once I'm a junior, I have a lot of scholarship opportunities. USC, Pepperdine, pretty much any school that had volleyball. I guess my position and how good I was, I could get pretty much a half tuition scholarship anywhere. But USC half tuition versus like a Long Beach State half tuition, which is where I ended up going, Long Beach State. And at the time they were number 1.
Okay.
And so my whole thing was I didn't really want to go to college because I knew at some point I'd be an entrepreneur, right? My mom gave me Success Magazine by Darren Hardy. So I always knew like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I just don't know what that is. But I was so passionate about volleyball. I was like, I do want to go to the USA Olympic team. And then by the time my body fizzles out when I'm like 30, 35, I'll do some type of business. So I go to the best feeder program for the Olympic team, which was Long Beach State. And I'm going there just to go to the USA team, right? After a couple of years there, I'm starting one of the best guys on the team. I ended up getting on the USA training team for beach volleyball. I was on it for 5 years every summer. So that was kind of like the route I was going. I was kind of like on that program until I got some serious injuries. Broke my ankle. I was in a boot for 8 months. It wasn't healing. Came back too early. And then I was compensating. So then I tore one meniscus, tore the next meniscus, major car accident where I'm in like
dominoes, right?
Yeah, where I felt I'm like that old beat up racehorse at 22 years old who's taking painkillers to practice.
Wow.
And when you're in like a USA caliber program, most people who are injured take painkillers to keep playing.
Sure.
And it's kind of like one time I literally broke my finger during practice and the coach is like, just tape it and keep practicing. And I did it. And it's just like, that's just what you do when you're an athlete. So, but then it scared me because I was like, wow, once you get injured, you realize that your career is over. And I'm like, well, what if like I go to Europe? And just to help people understand the volleyball industry, like I could go to Europe right out of college and within 1 or 2 years make $500K a year.
Really?
Very easy. I had friends who were making $1 million a year. Because in some countries, we don't think about this because we're in the USA. Some countries, volleyball is the #1 sport.
Wow.
Like Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Italy. Like, yeah, I have multiple friends. They'd go to Italy their first year out, make $200K. Right. And they're there for 9 months. And they're like, cool, go to Italy, $200K. Then next year, maybe $400K. So I was like, oh, and that was like very realistic with where I was, right? Already did a tour in Europe once. So I had some scouts who knew me. I had offers. But right after, so the summer before my last year of college, right? My mom also developed a really severe autoimmune disease. So she's going to Western-based medicine, and which is just basically the doctors we all go to. And she's getting different steroid things, different pills, and she has this autoimmune condition like no one really knows what it doesn't have a name. It still doesn't. No one could really figure it out, but it's definitely autoimmune. It got to the point where she's like, none of this is working. The side effects make me feel worse. So also it was difficult because not only did I grow up with a mom for 10 years, lived in Florida, who I rarely saw, but sometimes she couldn't even talk on the phone because she'd have so many canker sores. So we would just be texting for a month, right? And so during this time, she gets introduced to a naturopathic doctor, which is kind of new for our family. We're like, what's a naturopathic doctor? And it's basically somebody who learns about natural health and can heal your body without using pharmaceutical pills. You know, one of the products she introduced my mom to helped her dramatically. And my mom starts doing research and she goes, oh my gosh, this is a network marketing company. The doctor didn't tell her that. The doctor just recommended it. So my mom, she was telling me, you should get this. And I thought it was a placebo effect. I didn't think it was real, right? It was water, right? And I was just like, what? I have a kinesiology degree too. So just like her, I know the science. I took nutrition classes and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I didn't learn this. But I was so broke in college. I was living off of $600 a month. And a slight, books and scholarship, getting in student loan debt. And so at the time, I was like stealing food multiple times a week to survive, just living this broke athlete life. Like eventually it will pay off. I'm still selling some drugs on the side to pay for my food. And my mom, is paying my cell phone bill. So she's like, if you don't go to this event to learn more about, and I'm like, oh, it's an network marketing thing. Cause she's been trying to recruit me since I was 11. Right. And I was like, oh, she's like, I'm not going to pay your cell phone bill next month. So I go and I'm just so reluctant. I'm just like, why am I here? And she texts me, are you there? I'm like, yes, I'm here. Here's a photo, And then the guy who's actually doing the presentation, the whole company models their presentation after him. He's like the #1 guy.
Okay.
I get sold. He closed me. I'm like, the product is amazing. The price is super expensive, but he's like, it's a trend product. No one has it. Everybody will have it. The timing's perfect. And the comp plan sold me. And I was just like,
how old were you at this time?
I was 22.
Okay.
22, broke. You know what I mean? Like I said, living off.
And how old are you now?
33.
Okay. 11 years ago. Got it.
Yeah. So I call my mom. She's in Florida, right? And then the presentation was like 9 p.m. I'm like, Mom, we're gonna get rich. And I know my mom's struggling because like her income's slowly dropping from her network marketing. She can't really build anymore. And I'm obviously not in a good situation. And I'm like, Mom, like this, product helped you. No one knows it. And I just saw it. I just had this huge vision in my head of I know so many people in the volleyball community and all my friends I party with and no one has this product, but they're all got to get it for me or someone on my team. But I didn't have any money. Right. I'm like, Mom, and I was telling my mom, and Mom's like, hey, I'm like, you know how much I have? And I was like, but the first thing I thought of was how can I get the money? And I was like, well, so I go home, I see my Xbox. I'm like, I don't need that. So I sold that on Craigslist. Sold my guitar. I'm like, I don't need a guitar right now. Then it was July. My birthday's in November. I called up my uncles and aunts. I'm like, hey, can I get a front? I'm like, that water my mom's always talking about. I'm like, can I get a front on some birthday and Christmas money? And 5 of them were like, you're ridiculous. They hung up. The other 5 hey, here's 20, here's 40. Then I sold some personal training sessions. Within 2 weeks, I have $1,000 to get, start my payment plan with this thing. Right. So I get involved and that's how I got involved. Oh, then I'm catching up to her. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So first year, I made one sale. Took me 7 months to make my first sale. And I had this big vision, right? Gave away a ton of samples, but I didn't understand how to close, how to follow up or anything. And it was actually my mom's sister. So she closed the sale for me. Then 5 months after that, so 13 months in, I get my second sale. And now during this time, I'm in college and I graduate. And I think that's the biggest decision most people have to make. They're like, what am I doing now? I have a degree and I have a kinesiology degree. I had a good GPA. So I'm like, okay, should I go back to school? Because there's a couple more things I would need to do to apply for medical school. A couple more classes, like one more chem or physics. I'm like, I could go to medical school. I could keep playing professional volleyball. I have offers, or I can do this business. So the first thing I do, I start cold calling anesthesiologists. I start cold calling them. I get their number and I finally get a couple on the phone. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking of going to medical school. And like, none of them were like convincing me. I'm like, cause I mean, that's like a 10-year commitment of like going to debt, not seeing your family. And I was like, there's no way I can go to medical school. And then I was like, well, what about being like a naturopathic doctor? I can get into that. So I called the naturopathic doctor, who's my upline. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking at Bastyr University, which is like the top university in, like, I think it was in Seattle at the time. And she goes, honestly, like, you don't want to be a naturopathic doctor. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, the overhead's really high. It's really a business. She's like, I wish I could just do this business like full time. I was like, what? So that obviously gave me doubt. I'm like, I can't do that. And then my body was like so banged up that I'm like, I need to take a year off. I can't keep playing professionally. Like it just hurts, So then I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm going to do this like business, And it was scary, but at the same time, I'm like, the people that I looked up to in the business, they had the finances I wanted, they had the family life I wanted, they had the free time, they had the income. And I was like, this is it. But then it was hard because I'm like literally 2 sales in. And I'm like, I'm basically fully committing to this business because I'm not applying for school. I'm turning down these offers. And in my head, I'm like, well, what's the best thing I could do? Because I can't go back living at home. And I thought like, okay, I sell a luxury health product. Where are people who spend money on health? And I had this light bulb moment go off. And it was this gym called Equinox. Have you heard of it?
No.
So Equinox is it's a luxury gym where it's based in like New York and LA basically. Okay. It's just like the members at this one specific gym were Kobe Bryant, Monster Energy CEO. It's basically like it's like $260 a month. And this was, 11 years ago.
That was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. 11 years ago. So, and it was not just kind of a gym. It was almost like a country club. So it was in Irvine, California. It was 5 stories. They have their own like sushi bar, alcohol bar, med spa. So I'm like, I'm going to apply as a trainer to work here. So I could, like Jim Rohn said, find a job that pays my bills. And I'm going to build a network of those people because those people spend $260 a month and this would be a no-brainer for them. So I went there so the first couple of months I actually had to learn how to sell because I didn't know. I had some personal training jobs before and you join and they just feed you clients. So I go there after I do all the interviews and all the hoops. I'm like, all right, guys, like where are my clients? They're like, oh, they're on the floor. Like, what do you mean they're on the floor? Like, are they waiting for me? They're like, oh no, you have to like meet them and like sell them. I'm like, how? There was no sales training. So I basically like learned this pitch of like how to give somebody a free session and how they can like pay for one and then buy a package. So I had a 6-month window where I couldn't really do my business because I just had to like feed myself. And after that, I was just there all day long. I would get there at 4:30 a.m. and I would leave at 10 p.m. 6 days a week. And then during the middle of the day when I was tired, I would sleep in the trainer's lounge. And I was just meeting people. Hey, what's up? I'm Colten. Like, hey, looks like you have a shoulder injury. Can I give you an exercise? I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm Colten. I'm new here. And I would try to help people, give them an exercise and move on to the next one. And pretty much within about 6 months, everybody who went to that gym knew who I was. And then eventually
Mission accomplished.
And eventually they would start asking more questions about me, right? And like, so what do you do? And I was like, what I'm really passionate about is obviously this water, this business. And I got a couple customers. Eventually got to a point where like Jim Rohn said, right? I listened to that so many times. Like I started making as much money on the side with my business as my full-time job as a trainer.
Yeah.
And then my next goal, right? Double. And I did double. I did triple. Eventually I got to $8,000 a month still working as a trainer. But my sessions were getting less and less, right?
Sure.
And then it got to a point where my manager actually said, like, they knew. Eventually they started to catch on, right? So I'm bringing,
bro.
like, yeah. And they were like, hey, I was a top trainer, and I'm like bottom of the list. And they're like, hey, either like you start going here full time again or no time. And I was like, well, other people are part-time trainers here, but like, yeah, but not you. So basically they're like, you're gotta be full-time trainer focused. So I was like, they forced me to quit. So
But mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do. It reminds me of a story. You ever hear Jamie Foxx's coming up story?
No. Yeah.
He moved to LA, and he wanted to meet everybody. So he's a very talented guy, singer, performer, piano player, musician, comedian, actor, all this stuff now, right? Producer. But he just decided that he was going to throw the most epic parties ever and invited everybody and filled them with girls and all this stuff. And he got good at throwing parties. And it was just, his place was the place. It was the hopping place. And then when the music people came over, all of a sudden he'd be on the piano, and or he'd be playing a thing or checking out something, or they'd start jamming and they'd start doing this. And people were like, hey, who are you? And how did this happen? But he got to know everybody. The hustle around that story, I think it was with Tim Ferriss. If you want to listen to it on a podcast,
cool.
Jamie Foxx with Tim Ferriss, the first one he did, is very similar. It's like, all right, who am I trying to reach? How do I get in proximity? Because proximity is power.
Yeah.
How do I build relationship, conversation at a time, build trust over time? You couldn't do it in 1 minute. It's going to take some time. You got to hang around them for a while. You got to be a good guy, all that stuff, figure all these things out. And then how do I convert that into a business? Or Magic Johnson, when he was talking about his story, he's like, before he retired, all those box owners, he went to have lunch with every single box owner, at Staples Center or whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
Took him to lunch and said, tell me about business. So he could learn everything he could, because he needed proximity to a different group now. Get out of that athlete game and into the businessman game, So how do I get around those people? So fascinating that you were clever enough to do that. So you're now not in this environment, and you're like, you got to be a little bit of fish out of water as soon as you come out of there.
Totally. And they also said you can't work here. You can't be a member here for 6 months. So I was like, fine, I'll quit and be a member. You know what I mean? And they're like, you can't for 6 months.
Yeah, we see what you're
doing. I was just like, oh no. But so check this out. So what I found out though, because that was my whole network.
Sure.
Right. So what I found out though is, out of the 5 stories, they only own 4 of them. One of the stories is actually owned by a restaurant named Oliver's, right? So I become friends with the manager. I start sampling her our product, and our product is helping her kid who has special needs. And she was so grateful that she's like, you know what? And she kind of heard this. She's like, I know I'm not supposed to rent the conference room out for you, but I'll help you out. So not only did she allow me, because there's a conference room on the entry level floor, not only will I allow you to rent out the conference room, she gave me a killer deal. Like nothing, a couple $100, right? So I started hosting weekly events there.
So you could have all the signage of everybody, all the members walking past your room to get into the gym.
Yeah.
Smart.
And it was great because,
but again, here's the thing. How many people would say, well, they kicked me out. What am I supposed to do? They go sit at home and mope.
Yeah.
You're not.
I wasn't allowing that to happen.
Yeah. You hear Grant Cardone talk about who's got my money. We're in the outskirts of Vegas, looking down in the valley, looking down, and talking with my brother. It's just said, and he's reinventing his life. And I'm like, somebody out there has your money, but you're not going to find him sitting here. You got to go talk to him.
Yeah.
You got to go build relationship. You got to bring value. Yep. Once you bring value, everybody's go, oh, good guy. All right, what do you do? And then figure this out, then figure that out, then figure this. It's conversation to conversation, right? Value to value, trust, build belief.
Yes.
And if you didn't have something of value, it wouldn't have mattered that you met all these people.
Yeah.
You'd have just been that nice trainer guy.
Yep.
That would have been it.
So true.
You had something else on the other side.
Yeah.
And think about somebody who might have been a trainer then, maybe still a trainer today.
Oh, they are. Sometimes I go back there just like this, and I'm like, whoa, they're still there. And I asked them to go with me, and I'm just like, I just feel like this emotional, like, oh man, like a regret when I talk to them.
So I used to sell peanuts at the Metrodome in
So people are still selling
peanuts. Get your peanuts. Beer guys,
Yeah.
Coke guys, peanut guys,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. What city was this?
Minneapolis.
Okay.
And they've torn it down now. It's a different stadium, but
Okay.
they used to, met a domed place, one of the early ones. And I went back, this is probably 10 years ago, or when they opened the new stadium. And a guy I worked with when I was 18, okay, at 48, he was still slinging beers. I'm like, bro, going up and down the stairs. I'm like, how is that even? And I'll bet he's still doing it right now.
For sure.
Going, hey, I make my $300-400 every game. Like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
And it's like going back to a high school reunion. I only went to one, a 10-year reunion. It was the weirdest thing ever. I would kind of like to go to another one just to see, because it was just like everybody just got fatter, but basically same hairstyles and stuff, or no hair, later. But it was like a time machine, very, very strange. So anyway, some people get stuck. What would have happened, for example, if they just let you stay?
Yeah.
And be
I
a
could still
part-time
be
guy.
there, being like having to,
You know what I mean? You had this little machine going.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have left for a long time, I think.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people view obstacles as something that happened to them, but it's really something happening for them.
Totally.
Yes.
Causing you to live the life that you're supposed to live. It looks like a dead end. Oh, dead end. Nope.
Yeah.
Restaurant lady. Oh, dead end. Nope. Conference room. Oh, you know what I mean? And I often thought when I was selling stuff at the Metrodome, I got fired from selling peanuts at the Metrodome because I used to throw the peanuts at people. And one day it hit a little old lady in the face. It wasn't my fault. A guy, somebody knocked the guy's arm and it went off his hands and it hit this little old lady in the face. And her husband was an attorney, sued the Metrodome, sued the Minnesota
my
Twins, and
goodness.
sued the concession company.
Wow.
My manager brought me in and said, we have these lawsuits. And part of the lawsuit says if we fire you, then they drop the lawsuit. I'm selling peanuts. What do you think their decision was? It's like, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah.
But I often thought after, what if they said, you know what? I think that's nonsense. We're going to fight that lawsuit. Not only that, we're going to make you head of the concession company. Not only that, we're going to make you the commissioner of the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome. You're going to be the CEO starting today, making your 80 grand a year, whatever, managing a now demolished Metrodome. I would have thought I was the man, at 19 years old.
So
Yep.
true.
And been stuck. So sometimes an opportunity is not an opportunity, and sometimes an obstacle is not an obstacle.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, all right. So you you got a career moving now.
We got the career moving.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're
then-
doing your weekly things.
Yep. So first year, like I said, one sale. Second year, 142,000.
Nice.
Yeah. So 24 years old, 142,000. And one of the things too, I did, because I don't have like a lineage of upline who like helped me,
Sure.
but I would go to the company events. And I met this specific person who was 19 years old. He's making 19,000 a month. And one of the things I had a great social life, and he didn't. He was young,
6'7", young,
volleyball,
in shape.
college parties. And I was like, hey, so I was like trying to figure out how can I get this, like, how do I learn? Because I wasn't making any sales. And so what I did, I was like, well, I could leverage my social network to bring him out with us. And when he's out with us, I'm going to pick his brain. All the questions. How are you meeting
Proximity
people?
again.
How are you presenting them? How are you handling objections? How are you financing them? Like he's teaming, because we finance people. I'm like, oh, you're financing people with no interest, credit cards? I'm like writing this down. And then the people, I'm like, why are you, this guy was awkward. Right. But he's making money. All my friends are like, why are you bringing this guy out? He's saying weird things. He's like not socially there. And I'm like, cause he's making 19,000 and we aren't,
Yeah.
and eventually I learned his system.
But that's smart awareness.
Yeah.
You're really smart to be able to understand proximity is power again.
Mm-hmm.
Find a way to bring value.
Yeah.
His bringing value to him was getting him around the cool kids.
Exactly.
You know, he was like the awkward guy. You got him around the cool kids. That's a huge value for him. He's like, ask me any question. Just keep the pretty people around.
Exactly.
I got to tell you one volleyball story.
Okay.
Okay. And it's not what you think.
Okay. I just love this. I didn't know
Yeah.
the
So
volleyball story.
you know, I'm 5'11", you're 6'7". So what is that? 8 inches difference. I remember I'm 35 years old or something. Kids at home, you know, family man. And I'm traveling around, a network marketer, you know, on airplanes, you know, doing meetings and all that stuff. And there's a look that person has when they're headed home. You know, their shirt's kind of wrinkly. Their jacket is just like kind of, you know, the suit coat's kind of half on, half off. The tie's loosened. You know, there's probably some stubble. You know, you look beat up, essentially. So I'm on the plane, beat up, with a bunch of other business guys, beat up. Flight attendants, cute. Not paying a single, not even a glance at anybody because they all look like dead people to them. And I'm sitting there. And the U.S. Olympic volleyball team comes on. Tan, gorgeous.
Super tan for sure.
I couldn't imagine people more comfortable in their skin.
Oh, for sure. We always have our shirt off.
They're just like, just kicking back and hanging out. Hey, how you doing? And these flight attendants changed.
Goodness, that is hilarious.
I mean, they ran in the bathroom like cleaning themselves up. They got all smiley. They're bringing drinks, and we're all like looking at them like, you bastard, you know, because they're just like that is the
funny.
life, you know. It's like, oh, we'll give you some extra leg room.
my
Come on over here.
goodness.
No. And we're like, really? Can we have some peanuts? Something? I never felt more invisible in my life than when the Olympic volleyball team came
is
onto
really
my
funny.
airplane.
That is a good story.
True story. So that was your social life. So I get it.
Totally.
I get it. Like, invite me to when you land, wherever you're going. I want to go there because I know it's going to be interesting, right?
Definitely. We got a lot of attention for sure.
A similar thing happened to me is in the 90s. We had a television network, and I got to interview John F. Kennedy Jr., who might have been the most handsome man ever to be born. And interviewed him and brought the interview back, and we were editing the interview. And there was like something magical in the air because literally within 10 minutes of starting, every woman in the entire building
So funny.
was like pressing in to get a glimpse of this specimen. I'm like, wow, this is a real thing. Anyway, yeah. That guy, holy moly.
That's so
That guy was something. You remember him? John F. Kennedy Jr.?
I'm a little young. for
Oh,
that,
man.
probably.
Handsome dude. Anyway, enough about handsome dude.
Yeah.
I'm okay with my skin in my skin currently, but back then it was a different freaking conversation.
you look
You
great
guys
now.
with your abs and your tans and your big, broad, humongous shoulders
and broke.
yeah,
We were all
tattoos,
broke,
and
yeah.
then, you know, before it was cool, all the tattoos. Everybody's just like, oh man, okay, and they knew it
It was
too.
a fun life. Living on the beach, playing volleyball all day. It's not a difficult life. I still have friends who they're professional volleyball player living on the couch, but they get the attention and it's the
Yeah.
camaraderie. It's
Mhm.
Manhattan Beach. Manhattan Beach is, if you guys know, it's
That's
like
the
the
place.
mecca. It's the mecca where you're like a celebrity in this town. You know, it's the South Bay, like really close to LA. And I have friends who they just live this life and they're like this kind of this mini celebrity in this town, but it's
All right, so you end up And there's an interesting journey for athletes. Let's talk about that for a second.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Super interesting.
my youngest son, or second youngest son, his best friend since he was growing up was always an athlete, played every sport. Ended up he excelled in like 3 or 4 sports. He was like, the athlete of his whole school, 2,000 kids and 3,000 kids in the school or something. And he gets into college football and excelled there. And he gets drafted into the pros, and he's still in the pros today.
Wow.
But to go from Pee Wee, which is massive, to, junior varsity, which is smaller, to varsity, which is smaller, to college, which is minuscule, to pros, which is tiny. Mm-hmm. And he has to fight every minute. His biggest fear is injury.
Oh yeah.
He's dealt with soft tissue injury for, first 3 years of his career. To be able to keep going is a miracle, because they're doing things that human beings aren't normally meant to be doing. Mm-hmm. So no matter how good you are, there's something on the other side. And I remember there's a guy who used to work for me when I had a company in Dallas, Texas. And I'm trying to remember his name. But he worked in customer service. He was 6'4", black guy, incredibly athletic, and he could run an Olympic 400, Olympic speed 400. He was like on the relay team or whatever, and he could throw a football 100 yards.
Wow.
100 yards. And he played for the Toronto Argonauts football league.
It's like arena football or something like that?
No, it was stadium stuff up in Canada.
Oh, Canada. Okay.
And he was working in my customer service department for $18 an hour. Mm. Like, so what's going on? He said, well, I rolled my ankle. I got 2 pins in there. I can't pass an NFL physical. And where's he going to go?
Wow.
At 24.
Wow.
Where's he going to go? He doesn't pass the
resume.
physical. There's nowhere to go because it's all in one thing.
Yep.
Or somebody who went all in on being a concert piano player. And where does that go?
Yeah.
Not very many places. So important, I think, for a person to have awareness of whatever career path there is and be able to say, can I leverage this? And if I can't, is there another way to be able to do something? Is there a vehicle that I can find in order to be able to take my competitive spirit? Because I can tell you're both competitive. Take that competitive spirit and use it, for something good, and feel good about myself at the same time. So anyway, so you got back to your story. You got proximity to this top leader.
Yeah.
You pick this top leader's brains.
Yeah. And he was all offline builder.
All offline, just
learned his system,
face to face, belly to belly, all that.
Within
stuff.
that year, I started making more than him. Right, next year, and then growing, and then during that time too, we recruit some people who were in a couple companies like Vima, who went out, and a couple other companies, and they went out of business. So they found home with us, and they were social media network marketers. They only built on social media. And even though I didn't enroll them directly, I worked with them because they were my team. And I was teaching them, high ticket closing, presentations, and they're teaching me attraction marketing. And I never utilized social media. So this is probably like a year before I met you, maybe 2. And they were teaching me how to do outbound outreach, right? Like how to pick a location and do like, hey, I'm starting a business in Hawaii. Do you know anybody who's open to checking it out? And so they would teach me these, and we would just be hanging out and all about content. And that's how I ended up finding Pricilla, actually.
Really?
Yes, because one of the things they would teach was, so I went to #Laguna Beach, which is the city next door to which I live, Newport Beach, and I saw her. So she looked very good in her photos, and I just press follow. I look back the next day, and she follows me back. And then,
his bio said volleyball player 6'7". So yeah, I followed back.
Yep. Unfair.
Sorry.
Unfair advantages.
Yeah. Unfair.
Yeah. So, and then complimented something she posted. And that's how I initially met Pricilla.
So who asked who out?
So during this time, I'm actually doing, what would you call it? A tour with my team.
Okay.
Right. I had almost 2 months where I'm in Louisiana, Florida, Vegas, Hawaii, and I'm like having all these presentations everywhere. So we're talking for almost 2 months. I would have asked her out. No, actually, I think the day or the second day I actually asked you to come to my birthday party. And then she said no. So then she said no. And then, so after that, I'm gone for 2 months and we're talking and she's like, wow, this guy's traveling. And
Let me say something right here. So he was in Hawaii traveling, posting the most epic stuff, green juices, like the whole healthy living lifestyle. I am in traffic, driving 150 miles a day, watching his life online. I'm like, what does this guy do? He lives in Newport Beach.
Yeah.
Like,
she had to visit all the used car dealerships to keep that rapport going. You know?
So I'm waking up at, no joke, I'm waking up at 4:45 a.m. I'm doing my quiet time. I'm going to CrossFit, and then I'm baking fresh baked cookies with handwritten cards to bring to all of these used car managers to catch their attention.
Like Ted Lasso.
Door knocking,
Wow.
all these dealerships, no sales training, just a stack the boss put on my desk and said, these are all the dealerships in Southern California.
Yeah.
Here you go.
So you're not living your dream.
No, not at all. I was making good money.
You're hustling, yeah.
I was hustling big time. I did it, but watching his lifestyle was pretty epic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then after a while, we could tell we have some chemistry. This was like when Snapchat was big. So we'd be snapping back and forth all the time. And, you know, I was like, hey, when I get home, let's take you out to dinner, you know, in Laguna Beach. So took her out to dinner when we got back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on?
We had actually a really bad first date.
What?
It was not a good first date. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Can I
happened?
share this part?
Sure.
Okay. So he picks me up. Here I am. I've totally.
This is like Mr. Recruiter guy.
This is Mr. Recruiter. So I'm
Coming
31.
back for his perfect life, you know, a tour.
Yes. So at this point, I'm 31 years old. And at 25 years old, I decided I'm done doing life my way. Totally tap into my faith, give my life to Christ, start going to church, get out of the party scene, getting myself around people that are doing different things. So I'm on this path of I am going to wait for marriage and I'm not going to sleep with anybody until marriage. And, you know, all these different things that I had in my mind that I wanted for my future family. And we go on the first date and he picks me up. The car totally smells like weed. We get to the restaurant. We sit down.
I was definitely high.
We sit down. And, you know, I would post like scripture and stuff and, you know, things here and there. And so we sit down and he's like, so are you a 30-year-old virgin? I'm like, wow, that's how we're going to start off this date. Okay. So I'm like, no, I'm not, but I am waiting now. And he literally picks up his keys and his wallet and he leaves the table. And I think that he's gone. And I'm like, this is a great story. This is awesome. I live down the street. So he finally comes back and he just starts pounding alcohol. And I'm like, okay, clearly this is like,
Wasn't what I thought.
This is totally two different pages. He's like, I don't care about dating you. Like, I'm so focused on my business. I'm like, perfect. I want to marry a Christian man. I want to get married and have babies. And perfect. We did this and we're totally on two different pages. So at the end of the night,
So
he
funny
clearly
this stuff.
drank way too much. He's like,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, were you not on this date at all? So his follow-up game was crazy. And he kept saying, I want to take you out. I want to take you out.
And
Oh, you want my version of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so when I got the keys, I
I
actually
want to
went,
see these the recovery school skills from a bad presentation.
right. Yeah. So I actually called my friend and I'm like, dude, and I'm in the bathroom. I'm like, I think I'm just gonna leave. Like, there's no way this is gotta work. This girl's waiting for marriage. And then I was like, you know what? I kind of took it as like a challenge. I'm like, yeah, right. You're waiting till marriage kind of thing. So I go back and I'm like, I'm just out to get drunk, whatever. I'm just have fun. And
nobody says no to this guy. Nobody.
okay. So then after we had so much chemistry, we talked for like 2 months. So I'm like, I know we have chemistry, but she I could tell she like loved this Jesus person. Like, right. Like I could tell that there's like this like relationship she had with Jesus. And I was like, you know what? In my eyes, I felt there was this thing called like blind faith. Have you heard of that? Where so I was like, maybe I was kind of like asking her a couple of questions because I remember I kind of grew up in the church and then like we left, you know, when my parents got divorced, I never went back, you know, kind of thing. So I was like, you know what? Like, I think she'll change her mind, you know, and I'm
You
like,
were atheist at this time.
oh yeah, I was completely atheist. Didn't believe, I believe when you die, that's it. You know, you had a good life and live it up, you know? So during this time, I'm like, I'm just going to prove her wrong, you know? And then I was like, I'm kind of rusty in my like religion game. So I should probably like try to go to church to poke the holes and try to figure it out, like how it works again, you know? And I'm like, great.
And I'm trying to meet somebody at church. So he's 6'7". I'm like, you cannot sit next to me,
Yes,
please.
yeah. So I don't know how I convinced her to like hang out again. But we did kiss at the end of the date.
We did.
I don't know how.
Was it a good kiss?
It was the best kiss of my entire life.
I don't remember. I don't know how. Yeah,
That's confusing.
Very.
yeah.
You have this drunk guy who's basically the opposite page of you, but then he gives you a great kiss. Now you're confused.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't
Are you
confused.
questioning your life choices?
Not even. Oh, I was so like, that was a great kiss, which it was. I knew by the kiss, but I was like, no way, I
knew by
cannot
the
do
kiss?
this. No.
I don't even know what that means. I don't want to know what that means.
Anyway, so yeah.
Right.
So
You're like-
yeah, after
you're
that
like,
night, I was like, no.
So then I was like,
were you like, after the kiss, I can fix this guy?
No, absolutely not. I want nothing to do
well,
with
after
him.
the
Really?
kid,
Nothing. I really wanted nothing
well,
to do
didn't
with him.
at the end
Even
of the,
after the kiss?
After the kiss, because I've already been there.
I
I've already
understand. I
been
know,
there
I
with
know,
other men. I'm like,
I know.
I get the good kiss. It's not going to work this time. Like,
Okay.
that's where I was.
All right. So
Yeah.
then his,
I went down that road too
but
many
we
times.
finished the date on a good note.
Yeah.
Like because there's a kiss.
Yeah, you're
like,
here,
I'll see you
I'm
later.
here.
You know, and emotionally we're there. But then like the next morning, she texts me like, "This is not going to work out." Like, she came to her senses. You know, I was like, "This is not going to work out." And then I don't know how. We should probably look back on our text records. But we ended up finally. I was like, "I want to go to church with you." I think I said that, and that's what kind of got you back. But I was got to go to church with her. Because again, remember, it's not, even though this is the first date, we're talking for 2 months all day long while I'm on the road, right? So I start going to church and I'm just like, this is a sales presentation. They get you to do worship, to get you emotionally attached. They have testimonials. It's all story based, right? Story sell. And they have this offering basket. I'm like, that's the residual income. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go and go and go. And eventually I'm starting to understand like, okay, like what is this centered around, right? Like what is this faith centered around? So I can start poking holes in it and start giving her doubt. And when she has doubt, like she'll, you know, collapse basically, right? So eventually I start poking all of these holes in her, you know, way of thinking with Christianity, and she couldn't answer them. And this is like maybe 2 months into this, right? Maybe 3 months. And eventually it also got to the point where she's like, I know you're going to church to like prove me wrong and not seek God. So we just basically broke up. Like we were never together, but we were hanging out, but we just like, she's like, we're done. We're not talking, you know? And I was like, this is not gonna work out. Like, whatever, you know, this girl's like so in love with Jesus that even if I disprove everything, she like doesn't have like an answer for, like she doesn't even care. So, but it took me so much energy to actually come up with really intelligent questions that I actually was like, I actually want to get the answers to these, you know? So it was funny because I never talked about religion with anybody, and I do know of people who would, right? And not just Christianity, but like all walks of faith, but I never like open up that conversational topic. So during this time, I mean, we're network marketers. We know a big network of people. So I start taking out people to lunch who are like cult leaders, right? Like Freemason type of stuff. I start taking friends out who are like very strong Christians, Buddhists, like atheists, like all these people. And I'm just like, hey, never talked, you know, I know you're really expressive of your faith. Like, why do you believe in Jesus? Or my other friend, I'm like, why do you not believe, you know, in Jesus? You know, I know what you kind of believe in and why not? And I was just really open to kind of hearing everybody's reason why they chose it. And then I started also like some people I'm like, oh, that makes, like in my head, I was like, okay, but I'm like, that makes no logical sense. I was looking for like logic, right? I'm like, okay, you're more blind faith. Like you're just like, you know, church hurt or you don't really like your faith is not really centered on logic. So but eventually like the Christians that I was interviewing were, they said, you know, well, it's basically all about this guy named Jesus, right? And that's the whole faith is centered around him. So, okay, so was he a real person? Did he really die? And then did he really come back to life? And that's the whole faith. So if you can disprove one of those three things, the religion's proven wrong. So now I'm like going on just this journey of like, how do you prove this right or wrong? Like, where's like the logic for it? Right. And then for instance, I got introduced to a really good guy. His name's Jay Warner Wallace. And have you ever seen Dateline? So I think he is probably the number one person who've been on Dateline. So he's a cold case homicide detective, right? So he proves, if somebody,
I think I know the guy you're talking about.
yeah, Jay Warner Wallace, right? And he comes from like, I think like a lineage of atheists. He was atheist, and he's won the Dateline cases probably like 3 or 4 times. And he's like, you know what? Like, I can do a cold case on the death of Jesus. I think he just did it for fun. I don't know, or to prove it wrong. I don't know what his motivation was, but basically, after he did his research, he became a Christian. And he wrote this book and pamphlet of the eyewitness accounts, because basically the Bible is written by different people, and those are actually eyewitness accounts. So why are they accurate? Are they timely? Do they have a motive? Because there's only 3 ways to basically prove someone has a motive to lie, cheat, or steal, right? They either get more money, more sex, or more power. So in any cold case, like those are the 3 you have to look for, like, where are their motives? But if people followed Jesus back in the day, 2,000 plus years ago, did they gain more sex? No, they were waiting until marriage, right? Did they gain more money? No, they usually lost their business and were driven out of town. So they gained more power? No, they were like fled, they were killed, they were persecuted. So none of the eyewitness accounts had the ability to have a motive that they would, prove. And then they say, okay, did they corroborate, right? I think it's the correct, corroborate, right? But they can tell because with eyewitness accounts is if the story's identical, it's always false, because everybody has their own point of view. So if you read the different writings of it, they all have a slightly different version of what happened, which means it's accurate. So, and then and that's like one of like 20 things you look at when you are a cold case homicide detective. You look at the eyewitness accounts and you prove it wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the logic. And like he wrote a book called Cold Case Christianity. And I even saw him speak for about 4 hours. And I was like, and it was funny because like I was like, well, I need logic for my faith, but I still didn't want to become a Christian at that time. I'm like, this is weird. Like I did this whole like little 3-month journey to like get the logic I needed. And like this literally is so much logic. Like it was too much logic almost. Like I didn't even want to read the whole book. Right. But it was enough for me to be like, wow, Jesus really was a man. He really did die full death. And he really did come back to life, which is so supernatural. He had to be God. Right. So then I'm like, whatever he says is the truth. So then I was like, but I don't want to be a Christian. Right. And I was like, why? And I just felt like in my life growing up, I had a lot of hypocritical Christians in my life who, even though they had the identity of a follower of Jesus, that wasn't the way that they walked, and that they kind of hurt me. So I really was scared of being that hypocritical Christian that like hurt people. But after I went to some counseling sessions at that time, I'm starting to kind of come off drugs, being more sober. And then once I smoked weed every single day for like 10 years, literally in presentations, eye drops, and I was a functioning stoner. Once I kind of was becoming sober, I realized I needed to go to therapy to get rid of all these issues with like divorce and all that stuff. And that therapy allowed me to kind of accept a father, and an authority figure in my life that was a supernatural one. It wasn't like one that I was used to. It was one that was all loving, and then I feel like to accept God as your savior and your Lord, like you have to have the logic for me, but you have to have this ability to submit to an all loving, all powerful Father. And I wasn't okay to submit to authority, obviously probably why I'm an entrepreneur. Right. But I think once my heart posture was okay to submit to a supernatural being that's all loving, all powerful, and just wants a relationship with me, that's when I just gave my life to Christ. And I called my buddy Michael, who's a cross-sign in my business. And I was like, hey man, there's this thing called the sinner's prayer. Can you walk me through it? I want to be a Christian. And I called him, he prays with me, and I was just like so joyful. And I think also too, like with the life philosophy I had I was getting into this bad cycle of just drugs, sleeping around and making more money to fill this void and I kept hitting my goals I wanted. I had a nice car, living on the beach in Newport, doing whatever I wanted at a young age, yet I was so unfulfilled. I started to drink in the middle of the week, smoking more than I needed to, starting dabbling into other hard drugs. And I was like, it was just kind of like, what is this life worth for me, at least? I was like, this life's it. And I've kind of hit a lot of these goals that I thought would take me years, like so quickly. And I had so much hope and I had so much peace, like supernatural, that I've never had before. Helped me get rid of, addictions to pornography, addictions to weed, alcohol, stuff I never knew about. And that during this exact time, this is the most important decision for me, right, that I've ever made. Like, I have eternal life. I have heaven because of the gift that Jesus gave me. So I need to thank this girl that I'm no longer talking to.
So you're not talking to her through this process?
No,
Zero.
I don't even tell her. I'm not even, no, we're done talking. I'm like doing this whole journey by myself, not even, but I wanted to thank her because I'm like, without you, I would have never like even gone on this journey. But then there was this part of me that was like, I didn't want to talk to her because then I was like, if I talk to her, she's got to want to date me because I'm a Christian. And I didn't like that because I didn't like that because we had chemistry, you know what I mean? The reason I'm like, I'm not.
She's going to win. She's going to kind of win. It's just like she had her standard and like now I fit her standard. Dang it.
I guess maybe it could have been that, but I remember I just had the feeling I'm like, I don't want you to date me because I'm a Christian. And I think that's maybe because I didn't have the full identity of that yet. So I'm like, I don't want you to date me because of this new thing about me, but of course we had so much chemistry and we started dating. Right. And during this, that's my part of the story.
Yeah. So now you have, let's say, 2 people that just started network marketing and have no clue about it. Like I wasn't mature in my walk at that time. So now we're like, okay, how do we date now? I've never done this purity type of dating and I'm so attracted to you and we have all this chemistry.
We better get married quick.
How are we gonna do this? And so we went to church and they offered a premarital class.
Yeah, so, like how to date biblically. And like, I'm like, I don't know. Like my parents have been divorced too many times.
Yeah.
Like obviously your parents aren't,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're not divorced, but the joy, you know what I mean? Like a joyful marriage compared to just married is totally different.
I was like, we need a marriage mentor.
Yeah.
Like we need, obviously we're in the business world. Like we have business mentors. I'm like, we need some type of marriage mentor. And we found that, in this class we went to, it was like this 20-hour class, 5 Saturdays in a row, how to date. And his name's Dr. Roger Tirabassi. He has this course, over 5,000 couples have gone through it with a less than 4% divorce rate. And it's just like this amazing course. And it just gives you tools, and so much, and we've actually, and then him and his wife, we actually found out, they're pastors of a small church. And we were like, we got to follow these people. Like there's so much wisdom with these people that they're kind of like our faith and marriage mentors in our life.
The interesting thing through this whole process, and it's I love hearing kind of how you guys found each other, all that stuff. And everybody's got a different story and a different journey, right? But if I'm looking for patterns, okay, for you, Colten, specifically, pattern of obstacle, seek out proximity, solution,
so good,
obstacle,
yes,
seek out proximity to somebody has an answer, solution, even in the dating or spirituality, you sought out proximity, found some wisdom, something that works for you. All right, I'm gonna evaluate that. I'm not gonna just blindly accept. I'm gonna, whether it's a system inside of your team or how you're gonna be as a dad or any of these different things. So now we kind of fast forward. You guys are, you got a couple kids. You've been married how long?
2018. 5 years.
Yeah. So 5 years. And a couple kids at home, building a thriving business, a successful business. I'll kind of jump forward because again, the early life, pivotal moments. that middle period, that confused period, some pivotal moments, some standards created, some say, I'm tired of this thing. I need to examine a better direction, find proximity to people who have some wisdom and learn from them, right? Collect mentors wherever you can find them, find a way to bring value to them and get the information, right? You did it inside of your sales world. You did it inside of the network marketing world. You did it in your spiritual life, the whole thing. So success leaves clues. It's really fascinating. You're now building an organization around the world. How many countries is your team represented in currently?
Oh,
About?
I don't know. I mean, probably like 10.
10 countries?
Probably.
Yeah. And
bigger in some, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of people earning a full-time living.
Oh, a ton.
Ton of people. Some people having some life-changing income.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple years back, you made a realization that you needed to make systems that made sense. What caused you to come to that realization, and then what did you do about it?
Yeah. So, I became one of the top recruiters in my company. So when I brought her to the first convention, like I was like a name.
You're
in
the
my
guy,
company. Yeah. Like everyone kind of knew me. And then 2 years later, I wasn't the guy. There was all these random names ahead of me. I'm like, who are these people? And they were online marketers, and they love high ticket sales. So, and they were using special software and funnels and all these things. And I was trying to, what I did, offer value. They didn't want it. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, how do I get in and figure out like how to like grow?
Do what they did.
Yeah. I bought into a $10,000 internet mastermind. One of them was offering on the side. And eventually it just didn't work out. And I went through their funnels, bought their courses and finally, but it's difficult when you're learning that game, right? So I kind of figured it out and I was like, you know what? I know what to do. I'm going to piece all these things together. And during this time also when we're dating, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm getting into some business debt. I'm building a software for our team, but I'm going to get out of it, right? So I applied for a whole bunch of no interest credit cards, which I knew really well. And I'm like, I'm just going to dive in and build systems for like a good, maybe a couple months. A couple months turned into a couple more months. And eventually my credit card limit ran out and I'm over $100,000.
This is like 3 years ago?
It was like 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Maybe 6 years ago. Yeah. It was like when we were dating. So it was 6, maybe 7 years ago. And it got to the point where I was in over $100,000 of credit card debt now. No interest. Because I ran out of money because software is so expensive to build that average developer is a few $100s an hour. Right. So, and I wasn't like, that wasn't my industry. It's such a totally opposite industry. And
but again, I want to come back to, for the viewer, the listener, you had a mature amount of awareness sometimes when people get passed up or they see somebody else succeed, they blame, oh, nobody trained me, or they won't do this, or they do, or they justify, oh, it's just going to be temporary, or they hate on it, or, they ridicule it or whatever, versus saying there must be something here in putting together a system that can assist the duplication. There's still going to be a need for the person to be involved. You're never going to be able to fully automate anything. Otherwise they wouldn't need to pay all the reps the money that they're paying them.
Yeah.
They just have a thing and push a button and it'd be over.
Exactly.
So, having a mature amount of awareness that this appears to be working. And I'm sure you poked holes to find out if it was for real. Is this actually happening?
Totally.
Is it repeating? Is it one hit wonder? Nope. This is a trend.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This is a trend. I see it. It's clear. And then you followed your same path, which is, how do I get proximity to the people who know the stuff? And how do I gain knowledge? And it's a little bit challenging, to be able to get into that world when you're not necessarily
that
trained to
world.
think through it.
They don't like telling those.
They don't like
secrets.
sharing.
Yeah, it's not like
No.
network marketing where like they'll tell you everything. This
Yeah.
world, like these are secrets that they don't share.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
So you had to say, okay, I'm going to pay a price a different way,
Yeah, with money.
with money, with time, with research.
Started going to conferences. I started going to internet marketing conferences,
Internet,
which
you know,
are way different than network marketing conferences.
yes,
They don't
yes.
dress as nice.
Right. So you just made the decision that, look, all right, for things to change, I've got to change. For me to be able to dominate, I've got to be able to create some solutions for my team. And I give you credit, both of you, because I mean, being a team in making the decision, supporting the decision, you know, following through on all of that, emotional support and everything else in between is not always easy. You know, when you're moving together and you're spending money that you don't necessarily have in order to be able to grow and learn. It's like, really? We need to join another mastermind? I mean, what did we get out of the last one, really? Or whatever. You don't realize how much value is inside of masterminds. It's incredible. So I say that to say that there is a pattern to solve any problem in your life. Very mature awareness of what is actually working, what isn't. Getting proximity to those who have the knowledge, finding a way to get creative to do it. And even if you don't get proximity, there's a way to be able to buy access to answers to whatever problem that you have.
Yes.
And then the discipline to be able to say, I'm going to follow through until I make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this took how long?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a year and a half. And this is also a big reason why there's many reasons why I knew she was the one for me. But I remember during this dating period of the dating course, right? We had a budgeting thing where we had to disclose our full finances to the person we're dating. It's called Seriously Dating or Engaged. And I was like crying to her because I told her I was getting into debt, but I had to tell her I was in over $100,000 of debt. And I was just like, I am a loser. This girl's got to break up with me. And I remember on the phone, she's like, you know what? Like, you got to get out of it. And during this time too, I had to wash the whole software thing because I was still probably 40K short and it wasn't working. It kind of worked, but it didn't work for our team. And I was like, you know what? We just got to go back in the trenches and rebuild. And also at that exact point was when she had her 50% pay cut. And I couldn't teach people how to build online yet to make quick income. The only way I knew how to make quick income was offline. So we went to your event, The Most Powerful Women. Mm-hmm. We came back and she's, I need to do 90-day sprint. I'm like, I don't know how to do a 90-day sprint online. So I'm like, we're gonna do it offline. So I wash the software. I'm like, I'm just gonna pay this off with my network marketing income. And we're just gonna go in the trenches and do in-home presentations. And I mean, her first month after that, you know, she's like pretty much brand new, like a couple of sales here and there, not taking it seriously. Her first month, us working together, she made like $17,000. I mean, we did
part-time with the full-time job.
We did probably like 60 in-home presentations, you know, that month coming back. Second month, she made 15,000, but now she's doing most of the presentation, right? I'm just kind of helping out with some closing stuff. Third month, I don't even show up half the time. And because she forgets to even bring me in the conversation, she's closing people.
She's just going.
And then independent. And then she's like, I don't need you. Thank you. And then she has a team and she's got
love you. Don't need you for business.
I love you. And then we're just building that way for years. And then it just randomly happened. The software got brought to me again. I'm like, I don't want to do software, but somebody wanted coaching from me inside of our company. And then the software people are like, hey, we'll hook you up and we'll give you access to our software. I was like, yo, what? They're like, yeah, we'll partner with you. And I was like, what? So I was like, no, I'm not getting into debt again, you know, all this stuff. But I was like, man, our team needs this. So
can I say something right here? So at this point, we actually had money saved and we wanted to buy a house.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of money saved.
We had money saved and he was like, can I use this money? I'm like, you need to finish the dream that you started. Mm-hmm. So we stayed renting and we actually used that house money for the software. Yeah, we used the house money. And also, but I learned from another mastermind I joined, they said, don't sell a product unless you have customers who pre-order it. So I went to my team and I was like, hey team, you guys, this is my vision with this software for our team. I tried it. I tried to foot the bill and I was going to give it to us for free. I can't do it. If you're new, that's what happened a couple of years ago, right? So the only way we can do it is if all of us raise like basically like $80,000, and I'll give certain people, a promo for access to it.
I think the first one was like $500 or $300. And I had the first time we did that round was kind of like, we called it a Kickstarter, you know, we raised 40 grand, which was the exact number we needed to get it off the ground. And then 3 months later, we had a big team event and I had to do it again because we need another 30. We raised 40 again. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm not footing the bill. The team wants this. So they footed that bill. They helped us build the software. And then now we have, you know, iteration number 2. Now we're about to have iteration number 3 on that as well. So that's kind of how that happened on the second go around.
So, and again, if you find a way, you make a decision, you find a way, right? We did it with our studio. We've done it a million times.
Yeah.
Being willing to take a risk in order to be able to build something or create something or commit to something that somebody else doesn't see. You know, that foundation of faith, being able to see something in your mind that's not visible to people yet. You know, it's clear in your imagination. What was the result once the system, you know, you get through the other side?
Yeah.
When did you feel like, okay, this is good to go? How long ago?
Yeah. So what was that? Didn't we launch
right at 2020?
Before 2020?
All the COVID happened.
I think it was a couple months after the first lockdown.
It was like the most perfect time in the whole world.
Penelope got born, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had our first child like 2 months after the first lockdown. So I remember I finished it like right
around there. Yeah.
It was right after, it was a few months into the lockdown, which is when everybody needed something online. So it immediately just gave our team a ton of traction, tripled our volume within probably like, I don't know, 90 days maybe. And it's been a really big staple. Some of our teams have kind of like branched off of it and kind of like replicated it, which has been great because we give them this foundation to build off of. So yeah,
what's the big things you've learned out of a focus on systems? What's the biggest lessons or the biggest benefits?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's different categories of a system and you kind of taught us that. So even though if you have a software, it's like, okay, what are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to recruit distributors? Are you trying to sell to customers? Are you trying to onboard people? Are you trying to create live trainings? Are you trying to create campaigns? So there's so many different aspects of it. And I think like breaking down all those steps that you've kind of helped us with and identifying, okay, where's our weakness as a team? Like where's our biggest hole and where can we put money into a software tool to aid us in that journey. So, the very beginning, we just wanted a distributor acquisition system. Like how can we, and then the next one we did was how do we upsell people to our higher package? Because we were selling a $5,000 product and we were really bad as a team selling our top, which was a $10,000 or $11,000 product. This helped our conversion rate tremendously. And so and then after we did this, we're like, hey, let's add a system of about like a live training, like, because we don't really have like a calendar of live training. So we kind of like added on and like now we're creating it as an app and we're doing all these things. So it's kind of like software is never done, just like Facebook's never done. Every time you open up Instagram, you're like, it's new. So it's kind of like us. We're still adding on. We're still changing it to make it better.
Yeah. I just think a commitment to systems on everything. Every business is a series of systems.
It is.
You go into McDonald's, there's a way they do the fries. There's a way they take the order.
Yeah.
There's a way they do the drive-through. There's a way they clean the floors. There's a way they do everything. And if you think about your network marketing business, same way. If you can come up with a system, it's better than everybody just kind of winging it. What is the way that you find prospects? And what is the way that you invite those people? And how do you present in a way that duplicates and works? How do you follow up? What is the system for launching a person? What is the system for promoting events? What is the system for communication with your organization? What is the system for recognition? What is the system for leadership development? A collection of those systems. And I just want to encourage anybody out there, entrepreneurial in any endeavor, is to evaluate and be willing to commit to the systems, right? It's like there's kind of three elements, four elements that I would say that a business leader needs to think about, just kind of off the top of my head. One is culture. What do you want your organization to be known for? Okay. Two is vision. Where are we going? Why is it worth it? Why should we make the commitment? Why should we make the sacrifice? Three is game plan. Here's how we're going to make the vision real. And four is systems in order to be able to support the game plan. See what I mean? So most people don't think about that. They just like, oh, I'm just going to grind. Well, okay. Get used to a long grind.
Yeah.
Because unless you think about culture, vision, game plan, and systems, you're not going to have the freedom that you hoped you're going to have. It's going to be all on you.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I remember reading some business book. I don't remember what it is. A lot of businessmen talk about it. Just how big is your hole in your bucket? Like I'm putting, you can grind and put all these people in this bucket, but if your hole is just as big, none of them will stick. But we've learned through, proximity to you and a lot of the leaders who, get close to you, like their bucket hole is so tiny that they have very few people that drop off, to where it almost gets so small that like you don't really need to have a full energy on recruiting. Where a lot of the people that I work with now, like I would say the majority of their energy is their team, and then secondary might be recruiting, right?
What do you mean their team? Supporting the team.
Yeah, like doing
supporting those people making sense.
Yeah, like creating campaigns, working with specific leaders, creating systems, helping with event promotion. So maybe that's like the majority of their time, and then they'll do a couple like 90, or 1 week runs or 1 month runs to kind of recruit. But they're so focused on how can I get my team to increase by 10%, which will make my check bigger, versus how can I recruit 1 or 2 more people a month?
Right. And again, 4 things that we do: we sell, we recruit, we build an expanding team, we duplicate that process, through our own efforts or through our systems, and we lead. We lead people to become more productive.
Yeah.
Based upon our skills, right? Those are the 4 things. A lot of people get hung up on recruiting. Oh, you just recruit. No, that's part of what we do. That's one of the 4 things that we do. And we get more leverage by the more people that we recruit, and the more productive we make those people, and the more duplication we can create. So the more we get, we can reach the world. If it's only by ourselves, we can only reach so many. So it's funny how people misunderstand what it is that we're doing, because they see the recruiting side, they see the prospecting side. They don't see what we do in order to be able to create the revenue, create the sales, and what creates the commissions. You've now been actively involved in network marketing for how long?
7 years.
And you're
Almost 12.
12 years.
Yeah, 12 years now.
So, and isn't it funny? You're in your 30s, whatever, 33. And you're like, you feel like a veteran?
I feel like a grandpa, and then I feel like a new person. It's like this weird thing. I'm like, I've been here for so long. Yeah, everybody, I'm like, they're like, you're so young, and I'm like, I am. You know what I mean? I'm like, dang, like it was weird. Kind of, I'm in this weird place right now.
It's a good place. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy yourself. I want you to imagine. I was involved when I was 23, and now I'm 59. Okay, so think about your next 26 years. What's going to happen? What's that going to look like?
That's exciting.
What's that going to mean?
Yeah,
It's
big
gonna be pretty
impact.
wild, right? So through the systems, through growing teams, through growing family, through doing all these different things. So let's start with you. A person is in their network marketing journey, wherever they are. And let's say they're not quite performing as to the level that they think that they could perform. I know you consider yourself probably in that space too. You're not at your full potential, but even though you guys are 7-figure earners, and kind of what most people would consider kind of the peak dream life. Somebody's not at a peak situation. What advice do you have for them? What would you want to say to that person to help them go from where they are to where they want to be?
Well, I didn't have parents to coach me. I was never an athlete. So literally my first coach was my boyfriend in business. So what I've learned from Colten is if I do want to solve a problem and I need the solution, to get around the right person, which is exactly what he's been saying. So if somebody is stuck or not in the place that they want to be, they need to be around the fire. If they're cold, go get warm. And there's nothing to stop you to get warm from somebody, because I know that the fire people on your team, they want you close to them. And sometimes I feel like people think that they're a burden, and they're not. Like, we will go so much further together. So you just have to get close to the person that you want the results from.
Get close, number one.
Get close. Your
Bring value.
environment.
Bring value, number 2, because that's how you stay close.
100%.
Because if you don't bring value, you're not going to be able to stay close.
Yes.
Learn from them. Just be humble. Understand that they might know something you don't know about this particular thing. You might be smarter, but don't let your ego get in the way of your future. Learn from them and get better every single day. Every single day. You know, if you do that, you can't be beat.
Yeah.
Right?
And you have to know that it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's part of it. Because I know a lot of people want to do this inside of their comfort zone, and they'll only go so far, but they won't push themselves. And Colten has pushed me so far out of my comfort zone still to this day. And I just keep saying yes and figuring it out, and scared to death, and I'll go first.
Give me an example of something that's was way outside of your comfort zone.
Way outside of my comfort zone. So simple. The first time we went to the women's event, I had these people that I saw on stage that he introduced me to from the YouTube channel, the $1 Million interviews with Eric Worre.
We got to go into that for a second. So she bailed on me to go to GoPro.
I did.
And then I'm like, I need her to go to these events to get her sold, right?
Right. I remember.
So the way I convinced her, I shared it on one of your things. We would watch her favorite show. My favorite show was $1 Million Interviews with Eric Worre, a couple interviews. So once we got to the event, finally she got bought in. They would speak on stage, and then
and he said, "Let's go talk to them." I'm like, and say what? What do you mean, let's go talk to them? I had never listened to a business book. No idea who Tony Robbins is. 31 years old. I bought a house in Orange County just from grinding so hard. And nobody ever taught me anything about business. And then here we are. He wants me to go on stage or go up to the women that were speaking and just go introduce myself and ask them something. And I was like, are you kidding me? Okay, let's go. And even just making a couple sales, you have to stand up in front of the room and say that. My knees were buckling the whole entire presentation, and I couldn't even focus on the presentation because I had to stand up and say how many sales I made for a second. And then, it just...
So be willing to be uncomfortable.
Yes. I didn't have a social media.
Do it messy. Be willing to not be perfect.
Yes. I didn't have a social media.
And I didn't treat her
any different.
I treated her with the most love, which was treat her like any other distributor.
Really?
Still.
How does that work?
I think the philosophy I went in, I didn't date her to build a business with her.
Yeah.
So I've always had this philosophy. I support you 100% if you want to go all the way. I also support you 100% if you want to quit today. So I have no emotional attachment to if she wants to keep building with me, and my relationship's more important.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah. But
but like treating her like an employee, like a distributor.
No, like a distributor, like any other distributor. Like she doesn't get more attention than my other distributors do.
What?
I'm serious.
What?
It's crazy.
Well, if she maybe I'm doing something wrong.
No, wait, hold on. We have to install our product. He handed me a toolbox one day. He's like, "You're ready." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're my boyfriend." "No, you're ready. Go." And I went.
Well,
that's fine. That's fine. I mean, but she's your wife, right? You're not treating every distributor like your wife.
Well, it's different now. But at the same time, in the very beginning, I needed her to do she wanted me to make it easy on her, and I'm like, that's not a gift.
Okay, I get it.
That's a curse. If you want me to do certain things for you that I don't do for other people because I'm your boyfriend, I'm actually hurting you.
Yeah. Smart.
So I'm like, you need to do your own presentation.
That's actually very healthy.
And that came from a ego entitlement place. It didn't come from a good place. So it was good.
Take care of me. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's different too, because it's like I built for 4.5 years, was kind of a big face in the company. And then I'm building with my girlfriend. So we do have separate accounts.
Yeah.
Right. And then now, even though we're married, we still build separately, but she's involved in my business way more than anybody else would be. And she's working with specific people that helps my accounts rank up, and vice versa. Like I'm working with, there was somebody that was kind of on my team. I'm like, they should probably work better with you. So we do kind of cross. So it's I'm responsible for mine. She's responsible for hers, but there's things that we do to benefit each other's accounts for sure.
Does it ever get weird? Do you ever have too much business?
She tells me to turn off. I could talk about business all day. So she's the one that sets the boundaries.
Marina and I, we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And we don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Or we're, I mean, not all the time, but you know what I mean? we're both entrepreneurial, kind of driven, brainstorming all the time.
Well, tell the story of the hike.
Oh yeah, that was a long time ago. So this was like way before I even went to an event though. Colten, this is where I was when I met Colten. We went on a hike and he asked me the most simple question. He said, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I'm like, can you just stop talking to me about the future and about business and asking me these questions? Because nobody's ever asked me any of this stuff. And I was so annoyed by it because that's all he wanted to, like, can we just not talk and just.
I'm like, this is not even business. What are you talking about? I'm like,
this is life.
This is life.
I don't want to talk about life.
I never had those conversations at 31 years old. Nobody has ever challenged me with those questions. You don't talk about that in college.
But she also had a growth mindset, which is what turned me on to you, because I remember after our first, second date, I gave her my password to Audible. And the next day I call her up and she's driving. It's probably like 11 a.m. And I'm like, how you doing? She's like, oh, I opened up your Audible. I'm listening to a book. I'm like, oh, cool. She's like, yeah, I'm like a few hours in a 4-hour work week.
My mind was blown.
I
had been living under a rock for 31 years.
And you think of distributors, like how hard it is to get someone to read any book. And I'm like, you're 4 hours in. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, I learned this. And I was like, oh, this is cool. We can share like a growth mindset into some type of personal development, business, marketing, sales.
One thing, go ahead.
I was going to say my language changed and I noticed it in my conversations with other people. I was like, who is speaking out of me? This is crazy. And right when I got that 50% pay cut, that's when I listened to GoPro. And that's when you were talking about, it spoke right to me. And it made me really mad. I was like, I've worked so hard in this industry. It was just, I was mind blown.
But to go back to your question, I mean, sometimes Pricilla doesn't want me to talk about business.
Sure.
So we'll definitely.
My biggest thing,
right?
Yeah, like we talk a lot about business. My biggest thing is, can we just put the phones away? Because I don't want to spend time with you on your phone. Fair. And when it's family time and when it's Sundays, like we had to get a lockbox for the phone and it goes in the lockbox. Legit. Because I don't want to see my husband on the phone every second.
Right.
And we can talk business. Yes.
You find your boundaries. And that's fine.
And it's amazing. And it keeps business fun and fresh. And I don't feel overwhelmed because of those boundaries.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Some in network marketing and in any business, some couples just don't work well together. Some do. Some figure it out. Some don't. There's some dysfunction. But probably most of the counseling that I end up doing for top earners in network marketing has to do with their significant relationships. One's trying to recruit the other one to do something, or one's trying to be the Bigfoot, the boss over the other one, or, one wants to be involved in the other one saying, no, this is my thing. All different kinds of dynamics happen, but it's fun. I think personally for long, strong relationships, if you can find something in common, some hobbies, some things that you can enjoy, some pastimes, some things to do, and you can do them together. You don't have to go live separate lives and, we see each other, at dinner or something. I think that's for me, it's the best.
Well, you have to understand, when we were dating, there was no sex life. So we had a lot of hobbies and a lot of doing the things that we loved
you guys didn't
to do.
You guys didn't get creative at all.
No, we waited.
We wait till marriage.
But not like there's
we
no
never
cheats.
Even spent the night.
There's no like
we didn't even spend the night in a bed together.
So a great thing. I mean, we were so Roger, to your boss, he taught us. He's like, no looking or touching at private parts until you're married. He's like, that was his simple
that puts
rule.
A boundary. Wow.
So it was difficult. I mean, there was. Eventually, I was like, why?
We were fist bumping at some point.
I was like, all right. I was like,
cool.
Bye. I was like, this is like so annoying. I'm like, weird. I'm like, what the heck?
We didn't even spend the night in the same bed together.
Even, like, kiss you? Because I'm like, this is just turning me on. This is weird. And I'm just like, oh man, this is really weird and really annoying and very frustrating.
Literally, like wedding night was first night.
First time we had sex, yeah. Well, which was the first relationship I ever did that with. But I think it was
the last
biggest. Yeah, it was the biggest blessing ever. And it really makes sense because I remember I had so many friends that I knew that were in a relationship for too long because the sex was keeping them together. Have you ever met somebody like that before growing up? And I found out, since this was we waited for almost 2.5 years. We dated until we got married. I was like, wow, after a couple of years in, I still had like this want to hang out with her. And I had this like love for her. And even though like we never even crossed that intimacy, and I remember too, because it was more difficult for me in the beginning because she kind of made that commitment and I was kind of learning that. And I said, it's just so hard because like I want us to be more connected because I felt like the only way for us to be emotionally connected was to have that physical intimacy. And then the whole thing was like, our philosophy was we aren't meant to have that connection until we're married. That's what bonds people. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like God designed it to connect somebody so hard that you don't want to break up. And I remember her roommate at the time was dating somebody. They weren't sleeping together and they broke up. And I was like, why? Like a couple days later, I'm like, why is she not like crying and eating ice cream and like emotionally like crazy right now? And she seems okay. Didn't she love that guy? She goes, yeah, she did, but they never had sex. I was like, oh yeah. So when it's not right for that person, it's really easy to break up because you don't have like this emotional like connections. But I found out that like, since I still wanted to pursue her so much after 2 years, 1 year of dating, I'm like, wow, I love you so much. We have so much in common. And I haven't even got to share and had that intimacy with you yet. So I remember
it just got so much better.
Yeah. And it got so much better obviously afterwards. But I think for some people, obviously for me, all people, that's what I believe that is a great indicator. You don't have sex with somebody for a couple of years and you still want to hang out with them. Cause like I said, like the majority of my friends and even my past relationships, like what was keeping us together too long was probably the intimacy. There wasn't enough shared interests, shared hobbies.
Yeah. I don't think I could do it.
The hardest thing I've ever done.
Man,
the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Oh,
You met
and-
Marina? There's no chance, bro. It's not happening.
I'll say something real quick to you, Eric. When we were in that class, because we talked about getting married a lot sooner, and my pastor said, if you're struggling with alcohol, sex, and porn,
just any addictions.
Any
He's
addictions.
all free from all addictions for 1 year. And
1 year.
Like
And I looked at him and I said, 1 year.
Right.
Yeah. So
And then I'll marry you.
Yeah.
Then I'll get engaged. So he waited that whole entire year of sobriety.
Pornography, weed, alcohol, and then that was even more challenging, was getting rid of all those addictions for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I'm gonna ask you, Colten, you get to have the last word.
Okay.
What advice do you have for somebody out there that's wanting to build a network marketing business? I think you've given some great life advice, your spiritual journey, your couple journey, your dating journey, your building systems, all that stuff. Somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, they want to be successful in network marketing or any entrepreneurship endeavor. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think the first thing it comes from is like a big goal that you're emotionally attached to. Like, where do you want to be? I think a lot of people like, I want to be a network marketer. To do what? To get where, right? And I think once you get really emotionally attached to that, then you kind of found my pattern, right? Once you figure that out, okay, who is the person I need to get proximity to figure out their system, their actions? Like, even I just came from a company event.
Find the cheat code.
I just came from a company event. I was a keynote speaker. There was some other keynote speakers there where I'm hanging out and I'm getting proximity to them. I'm like, why is no one else talking to these people? They're crushing it. I'm picking their brain for like 20 minutes. What are you doing? And I'm learning the little softwares they're using, the little community building strategies they're using. And then I literally go back to my table and I'm putting notes in my phone. This. And now I have an action plan leaving this event. So that's what I recommend. I have this big goal of things I want to do with my life and with our business when it comes to, our finances, and also it comes to our impact. Like, so we're emotionally tied to that. The next thing, again, getting proximity. If you're network marketing, who's that leader that company that you want to be close to, and how close can you get to them, right? There's there's levels, there's Zoom calls, there's events, there's staying in the same Airbnb with them at the next event. There's doing life with them. Like, we've had so many people that were really smart that they actually moved to our city because they wanted to go to church with us. They wanted to go to lunch with us. They wanted to go to the local meetings with us. And they've grown more than anyone else.
Proximity.
They've grown more than anyone else. And it's like, wow, who you are because of who you're around. And that's what I even moved. I moved from Long Beach, California, which was a ghetto, to Irvine, which was like a very nice city. And I was around a different type of person. And I learned it changed my behavior,
Yep.
you know? So that's what I would recommend doing.
Proximity is power.
Yes.
For sure. I want to thank both of you for spending some time with me today and sharing your story. I'm looking forward to next chapters and kids growing up and grandkids, and we'll look back at this and we'll all laugh. It'll be fun. It's fun sharing part of your story with you, just watching you do what you do. I'm proud of you both.
Such an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Eric.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So that's my conversation with Colten and Priscilla Echave. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure you're subscribing to this channel. Make sure that you share this with a friend. Pay it forward. I know that they're going to be thankful. I know that I'm going to be thankful. And until next time, go out there and make your life amazing.